If you'd like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or get involved in the conversation on social media. Join the Pearl Jam Podcast community group on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at liveonfourlegspod.
That was a song that we never played here. We never played very many. We played that song like 3 times, and then there's a crowd of guys right here that are, they're losing their shit a little bit. I'm just telling you guys. There's a big guy right here, he's got his fucking eye on you, and he'll start pulling people out one at a time. I think the key word here, it's 1 word, 2 syllables, maintain, brother. Maintain. Because we got some precious people right up front here. Just take it easy, take it cool. And if anybody falls, pick them right the fuck up. If they don't make it up, start waving your arms wildly so we can take care of it immediately, all right? So we're gonna take the needle off the record, put it back on one more time. We're gonna do this one more time, especially on this side. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Had to do it. Thank you. And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hey everybody now, welcome to Live on Four Legs, a definitive live Pearl Jam podcast. Well, once you look at that, 2024 is not over yet. That means we have one more tour that we need to embark on, and that, my friends, is the Australia-New Zealand tour. It's happening at the end of this week, as a matter of fact, on Friday, which, if you're in the States, if you're on the East Coast like we are, then it's actually happening sometime in the morning. Like, you'll wake up and you'll know what the set list is. It'll be that early in the morning, like 4 or 5 o'clock, this show is going to be going on. So wake up, see the set list, get engaged and everything like that, and then go about your day, which should be very exciting. And it's exciting. I mean, I can't say it's really as exciting for the people in the States that it will be for the people down in Australia and New Zealand, because they've been waiting 10 full years to get Pearl Jam again. And ladies and gentlemen, they've fucking deserved it. These are good people. This is a good crowd. A lot of good friends of ours down in Australia and New Zealand, and we're going to hear from one of them today who requested this episode on Auckland 2009. And it's going to kick us off because that's where we're going to be on Friday. So let's get right into it. Randy Sobel over here, John Farrar over there.
Hello, hello.
Australia. I'm not going to do any typical Australia stuff because that has gotten me in trouble before. I'm not going to say mate. I'm not going to make a Bluey reference. It's all over. It's done. I'm not doing any of that. Crocodile Dundee. That's it. That's it. That's my last. But I have to give it to the people down in Australia who I know have a little restraint after all this time of being like, yeah, we deserve this. Come on, let's get this. And especially after some quotes that Ed had said during COVID, during 2020, that, hey, we might end up going to Australia first because they handled the pandemic the right way. Now they finally get their turn. So, speak on that. What are we looking forward to with Australia here?
Well, don't forget New Zealand too. You got Flight of the
I'm not
Conchords from New
forgetting.
Zealand.
I mentioned it.
Lord of
I
the
mentioned
Rings.
it. I'm not forgetting
They're
anything. I'm not.
you're
It's
gonna get in
all
trouble. Gonna get yourself in trouble again.
this
Um,
episode is literally about New Zealand. I'm not forgetting it.
like you said, like we have some listeners down there who have been talking about this for a while, and yeah, I remember when that quote came out, it was like, oh, they haven't forgotten. They're gonna do it, and then it's taken a couple more years, but I'm just excited because I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago. These shows are always so different. They always change it up in interesting ways, and they'll break out stuff they haven't played that's appropriate to the region. You're going to get some surfing stuff, and you're going to get some covers that you don't get anywhere else in the world. So I'm interested to see how different these shows are from what we've seen this year. Like, what are they going to do that's unexpected that we haven't seen so far?
Well, kind of like the tour from 2023. There are 7 shows overall, so it's not quite there, but it's very reminiscent of last year because you had 4 cities that had 2 shows. And in this case, you have 3 cities that have 2 shows. And then one that only had the one. And in this case, the Indianapolis of this tour, which obviously didn't happen. I hope that the juju doesn't pass on to Gold Coast over here because they are only with one show. But I think what you're going to see, and I don't want to set like a disappointing expectation for those who've been like really waiting for this band. I think this Australian crowd is going to get all of the big songs that they've been waiting for. And I mean, not like a greatest hit set per se, but I think they are going to come out firing with a lot of the well-known crowd participation kind of stuff. I think I'm predicting it right now. The tour is going to open with Release, and it's going to be this kind of moment where everybody's together in the crowd and you kind of feel like you're back in a Pearl Jam show. And I know that a lot of people down there have been to Pearl Jam shows either in the States or in Europe or wherever else. And it might not be the last time that they've seen them since 2014, which really those shows were big day out shows. So it didn't feel like Pearl Jam shows per se because it was a festival all kind of settled around other bands and everything like that. But I think, again, I don't want to say they keep it simple, but I think they come out with the stuff that they know the fans are going to be real passionate about. I think you see a lot of the similar dark matter structure that we got here in the States. I think you'll get 1 through 4 at least one of the shows when there's double shows. And I think that they're going to keep it pretty simple outside of like maybe like 3 or 4 mix-ins toss up during the set. And whatever doesn't get played on night 1 gets played on night 2, whether it's Better Man, Jeremy that get left off night 1, that'll be played night 2. They're going to hit just about everything that you expect out of a Pearl Jam show, but they're going to have the little things thrown in there too. And I think what to get excited for, and I know it's exciting for us over here and exciting for you guys too, because we don't get this kind of stuff, is that, there's always a chance of a Neil and Liam Finn appearance. We already got a Liam Finn appearance earlier this year in Ohana, but there's always a chance for another one. We have a massive array of songs that they can go to in Auckland, of course, and there's going to even be a song at the show that's an OTOTO at this point that featured them, and it'll be interesting to talk about because I didn't know about the song, but that's for a little bit later. That's for a little bit later on.
Crowded House is actually on tour in New Zealand and Australia over the next 2 months or whatever. So they're actually going to be playing a show in New Zealand the day after Pearl Jam plays their first show on that Saturday night. So the rest of the shows, I think they're going to be double booked. But if you're going to expect a Neil Finn appearance, I would expect it at the first one or the second one, because otherwise it doesn't look like it's going to happen. But yeah, I'm expecting, like, tying it into what's going to happen this year. I'm expecting some really good shows. I think they're always kind of hidden gems down there, and I think we're going to get 1 or 2 of those this run too.
All right. Well, this, of course, we're covering this show because it was a Patreon request from a good friend of ours and somebody that we got to know really well over the last couple of years. He used to host a Pearl Jam podcast himself called Ventricles Pumping. and hasn't done it in a little while, but he did a really nice job with that. If you can find that podcast, go listen to it. It felt more like a radio DJ thing, and it was really good. It was a really unique take on it. So definitely go check it out whenever you can. He hasn't done it in a little bit, but still worth your listen if it's still around. So Chris is going to be going to every single show on this tour. He's going to be helping out a lot with the get-togethers, the post-game shows, some pre-parties that are happening, especially in New Zealand. He's going to share some information about that. And also right now, since this is his request, we are going to hear from him about why he wanted this show so much. So let's hear everything. He's going to do all the promotion that I usually do. I don't have to do it today, guys. I have an off day. I don't have to be like, guys, we got Patreon stuff. He's going to be doing it all. So listen to Chris. You'll get a lot of insight on what's happening over there and where you can find people. And I hope that anybody that's listening in will be able to meet up with the crew, William and Brad and Gianluca. So here he is, and enjoy his story.
Yo, Randy, John, Javier, Live on Four Legs listeners, kia ora. This is Chris Warren from all the way down here in Tamaki, Mosquito and Aotearoa. That's Auckland, New Zealand. And we're a week out from Pearl Jam returning to our shores. I couldn't be more excited. Myself and partner Chantel and a handful of other people I've seen in the podcast group will be trekking from New Zealand across all of the Australian shows too for the last of this Dark Matter tour. Can't wait. So a couple of things real quick. A few of us will be helping with the React Respond episodes. So we're loaded up with some Live on Four Legs stickers, the big white Live on Four Legs flag. And the plan is to meet outside whatever gate number or letter allows access to Golden Circle. We're going to convene there after each concert and hopefully capture your voices and reflections and immediate thoughts on the show. Also, on Thursday night before the first Auckland concert, there's a bit of a 10 Club pre-party at the Ding Dong Lounge. That's a music bar, Central City, and I've teed up to make sure there's nothing but Pearl Jam on the PA, and it's a bit of an open mic setup too. So bring your singing voices, bring your performance vibes if that's a bit of you. No matter how good you are, we'd love to hear you. We'll be singing in fine voice. And I was stoked to hear from Randy that the show was going to cover Auckland 2009 from Mount Smart, Backspacer Tour. It's the same stadium that they're playing next week. And this sticks in my memory for a few reasons, being at this show. It was the fourth time I had seen Pearl Jam, but the first time in a stadium environment, outdoors, starting in the daytime. And things I remember from the show itself was how crowded it was. It was an amped up crowd, and it was a rough crowd. I was sort of in the back of the Golden Circle section, so like my spine up against the back rail, and I was in pain, getting pounded, jumping non-voluntarily sometimes because there was so much movement around us. So I can't imagine how rough it was right up the front. You'll hear on the bootleg Eddie getting people to take steps back intermittently through the show. He tells one person to maintain, brother, maintain. 15 years later, that's still an in-joke with myself and some bandmates and friends. Whenever one of us is a little bit too drunk or a little bit too excited, you know, maintain, brother, maintain. I remember being positioned in front of Mike, and I have this very specific moment at the start of the Even Flow solo where he clicks on his pedals and the volume of his lead guitar was just like a laser into my brain. I think it was partly where I was standing. They were using tube amps at the time. Javier could talk to that. And the way the amps are positioned, the sound is very directional. So I must have been in the prime spot, but it was Mike McCready right into my prefrontal cortex. It was absolutely all-encompassing. I can't quite describe the feeling that I had when I'm thinking back to it, but it was wonderful. I remember they played Hold On. No one saw that coming. I wouldn't have predicted that in a million years. And it still surprises me when I listen back to the boot. I remember the Finns coming out. Neil Finn, the singer of Lead Man in Crowded House and Split Ends before that. And they played a cover of Chris Knox's Not Given Lightly. He's like a lo-fi indie pop artist. Think like Daniel Johnston, but from New Zealand, and I think he had just suffered a stroke around this time, so the Finns had done some fundraising for him. The version is absolutely ramshackle, like a campfire or a drunken pub sing-along. Not particularly well rehearsed, but that's kind of the charm of it. The spirit of Chris Knox is in that performance. And right after that, in the second encore, the spot where we would usually get Alive. Here we had The Fixer before Rockin' in the Free World and Yellow Leadbetter Closer. But The Fixer was huge. I remember the floodlights coming on, if I'm remembering correctly. The Fixer was a really big single down here in Aotearoa, so the crowd responded really well, and it just sounded so much bigger in person than the bootleg could capture. And I would like to see the return of that song at some point. I'll talk to the bootleg very quickly because this is one that I return to frequently for a few reasons. As you guys have mentioned on the show, in 2009 they had a more stripped back equipment setup. It was very raw, so some really dirty tones. And also I find on this tour some of the playing was a little bit more sloppy. You watch videos of this tour and you're getting a lot more movement, particularly from Stone, so it's not quite as tight as you sometimes hear. But I feel like this Auckland bootleg was the tightest of the bunch from that year, and the dirty tones really lend itself to kind of new shades on songs like Severed Hand, Faithfull, Hold On as well. Actually, they sound real dirty, but it works. It absolutely works. And the Backspacer tracks performed in this show were real highlights as well. I think this is a definitive live version of Johnny Guitar. Great little Eddie yell to end it instead of the fade out on the record. The band must have liked them too, because they put out a 7-inch through 10 Club of Amongst the Waves and Unthought Known from this Auckland concert. So some of you probably have that in your record shelves, and it just speaks to the quality of performance and the quality of the sound capture from this Auckland show. So fond memories and a bootleg I return to frequently. And finally, just a big thank you to Randy and John, and increasingly Javier. Loving your input, bro. But the amount of work that goes into editing episodes, sourcing interviews, working across time zones with people, staying up late to capture people's responses or getting up early, just the amount of work that goes into the podcast behind the scenes. I don't know how you guys keep it up and how you manage to keep up the quality and consistency of the episodes. Blows my mind. So thanks so much. You're doing the Lord's work for us Pearl Jam fans. So I look forward to connecting with all of you soon. Bring on the tour. Can't wait. All right, take care. Bye.
All right, Chris, thank you so much. That was great. And we'll be definitely bringing up some of those points. I'm glad that you brought that up about Chris Knox. He's not somebody that I was very familiar with, and knowing that information, because I didn't know just by during the introduction to the song. I think Neil says something along the lines of like, we're really happy that we still have him, which it was a little like, okay, is he all right? He's still alive, I believe, but it gave a little context as to why they played the song, which is nice. So we'll talk about that when it comes to later, but right now we got a show to cover that's 28 songs long. It's very good. It's a very good show. And this is one of the reasons why you don't discount bootlegs from places that you don't live, from shows that you're not familiar with, because they can be just as good. There were about, Ed said at some point, like 30,000 people on the floor or something like that. So yeah, this is a big crowd. And as we'll find out, Ed has some trouble with this crowd too. So Ed takes the stage, says, looks like we've made it. Good evening. We're going to ease into it a little differently than we usually do. We're going to at least play until dark, I promise. The opening song of this show is a song that kind of came back into the opener role about a year or two ago when they were doing the sit-down sets. So in the acoustic setting, Daughter kind of returned, and by return, it hasn't been opened a whole lot live. So it really was kind of like, okay, let's test something out again. And they did it one time. They opened with it in, I believe it was Portugal this year. So this is how they're going to start off the show with Daughter.
Alone listless breakfast table in an otherwise empty room. Young girl, violin, center of her own attentions. And now mother reads aloud, child tries to understand it, tries to make her proud. Yeah, the shades go down into her head, painted room, empty night. There's something wrong. Don't call me, don't not fit to a picture that will remind me. Don't call me, don't not fit to a picture that will remind me. Don't call me.
So as I mentioned, there was kind of a revival of this as the opener, and in kind of a different context. I think this one was like, let's put energy into this and let's start the show. And what we saw a couple years ago was, let's find a way to ease into this, give a sing-along, but also let's not overwork ourselves, because outside of Daughter, the next song would be something like, I think the time that I saw it open, I think they went right into Off He Goes. Actually, I saw it open twice, Off He Goes, and then the other time I believe was Come Back. So it's not like they're jumping into something with more energy because of that sit-down section that they were doing for like 4 or 5 songs. But here, they're not doing any of that. So Daughter kind of has the intention of like, let's rev people up, let's get people excited, let's get people singing along. And what's really cool in this version is that Ed is just the hype man. Every time you get to a part, he's like, come on, sing it. Like doing these little things to get the crowd more invested. And you have to think, it was the first time in 11 years since they played there. When they were there down in Australia in 2003, they didn't visit New Zealand. So it's the first time they're appearing there in a very long time. They're excited about it, and it kind of riles up the crowd a little bit, and as we'll see, maybe a little bit too much, but it's a good way to open. Not a song that I really have a lot of feelings for nowadays, but a version like this made me perk my ears.
Now, do you know the last time before this the Daughter had opened a show?
The only other time that I remember it opening was like in 93. Was that it?
Nagadoches 1993 was the last time.
I know too much shit. I was never going to give you the show.
16 years. 16 years.
Wow.
And they brought it back after this. And then after this, it wasn't again till
Bridge School, right?
Yeah, and then the ones in 2022.
Quebec
in
City,
Toronto, and
Toronto.
Louisville.
Right.
Yep. So we think of it as like a thing that was pretty common now, but not really. It's only happened a handful of times.
This is on the level of some of the stuff that happened in like 2005, 2006, where Better Man or Porch opened a show, or the one time that Alive opened a show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. He comes out early on and he's like, oh, what you got? And it worked. The crowd is super loud. They're into it. He changes that line to the sun goes down, going back to the setting and like playing coming out in the playing till dark. This is a cool version. I think it did what they wanted it to do.
And there's no tag on this, and I appreciate that choice, because when you open up a show, especially a song like Daughter, you don't want them to linger in that tag a little bit unless you have something really powerful up your sleeve. If you're going to linger on the tag and just kind of let it go and just kind of let Stone vibe on it a little bit, it might lose a little bit of what energy you had from the song, but I think the way they played it was absolutely perfect, and it was an easy way to get you into the next 3 songs, starting with Severed Hand, Corduroy, and Hail Hail. I am going to go to bat for this version of Severed Hand. Holy moly, was I impressed with this. This is a phenomenal Jeff Ament show. Just unbelievable. His bass runs are absolutely all over the place. little intricacies that you can hear in this bootleg are just tremendous. And while it's a great Jeff show, I think this is also a very powerful Matt Cameron show too. He's very much in the forefront. I think that's something we've talked about in the 2009 boots before. This solo is an absolute barn burner in Severed Hand. It's the best version I've heard in a long time of this song, and that's saying a lot because there are a lot of fantastic versions.
Recognized it from the wedding mail. Said it's okay, do you want some more? I said yeah. Oh, you see dragons after 3 or 4. I said yeah. Understand I'm not falling down. I said look around, this room's taller now. I can't close my eyes. I see those sounding waves and waves. That's me. Stay calm. Oh, if I don't lose control.
Yeah, I thought it really cracked right from the beginning. They go right into it, and it had some really good energy. But you mentioned Jeff. To me, Hail Hail is the one that Jeff really shines on. His little bass run at the end there, where it gets to that almost under pressure riff a little bit, really stood out to me. I enjoyed Severed Hand, but to me, Hail Hail is the one that sticks out.
I know, and I fully agree with you, but Hail Hail is the song that Jeff sticks out on. Severed Hand, not so much, right? You know what I mean? After Severed Hand, I think you get a very excited version, and the crowd is just into it, and I think they're kind of going all over the place. So you have to stop the show. Unfortunately, it couldn't be right from Severed Hand into Corduroy into Hail Hail, which would have been amazing. But Ed sees something in the crowd and says, all right, we're going to do the 3-step back spiel here and create some separation. So, yeah, all 3 of these songs really take you to a good spot to open up the show. Corduroy is fantastic here, too. I think it takes you on the ride, it takes you on the build, and it keeps the crowd invested and keeps them on the edge of their seat. And yeah, I think this was an excellent way to start your show and kind of get your crowd fired up. All right, Ed says, cheers. I don't know why it's been 11 years since we've been here, so thanks for congregating. So this one's for you, the Faithfull. The next section here is going to be Faithfull, Got Some, and then deep, rare song, Hold On. We're going to start with Faithfull here. I thought by listening to the first bit of the song, going into the first chorus, there was something brewing. The way that they were building up to it, where you were able to feel like the band almost couldn't contain themselves before they broke into the chorus. Like Matt started to go a little bit harder than he usually does. And it's even before it really is supposed to start building up. They want to explode on it. They want to make this like a massive anthemic, powerful song, which in the beginning, it's mid-tempo. It's one of those songs that kind of changes its identity. It seemed like they did not want to wait to step on the gas on this, and it made for a really exciting version.
Listen our prayers, the man upstairs is through. With all of this fucking noise I'm through with screaming in echoes. Nobody hears, it goes, it goes, it goes. Like echoes, nobody hears, it goes, it goes, it goes.
Jeff again on this one. Jeff is going to have a great show. We're going to mention him a bunch of times. But to me, he can be the one to kind of bubble that up from the surface and kind of take the song from that mid-tempo, a little bit more relaxed. The tension that you get from the bass can elevate that and bring it to a new level. I think Jeff does that better than almost anyone. You hear it to a T on this version.
Got Some is another really good Jeff song too. You hear Jeff really, really well on that. And I mean, you go into Hold On now, and you got to think earlier in this year, earlier in the fall, I should say, only a month before this, Hold On was debuted and played for the first time at the Spectrum, at the third Spectrum show. One of the top moments that people will go back to, like, holy shit, they played the song. And after that version, they've only played it 4 other times, including the one that we get to hear here.
This is kind of a rarity.
Over the summer, I believe it was Berlin from 2014, and I believe we both felt the version was like, okay, it was a request. It kind of felt like the song didn't quite have the mustard that maybe you'd want out of it. And I think by hearing this version of Hold On in comparison to that one, it's night and day, because I thought that they absolutely nailed this. It felt rehearsed. I mean, for all of these songs that they start with, the band is working and clicking on all cylinders. But I was just really impressed with the way that they showcased it. And it's one of those things where if you're going to play a Rare song, you have to do it right, or you know you'll never do it again. And if you don't ever do it again, you want people to remember the very few times that you did do it. And I think for the crowd down in New Zealand that hasn't gotten a show in 11 years, this should be seen very, very highly as one of the big moments that they've gotten down there.
You know, when you get a debut like this of a super rare song, the first one is always a little bit iffy, but it's the second one you want to see. That's one where they're going to go back, listen to the first one, practice it, see what they screwed up on, and they're going to tighten it up, and the second one's going to be the best one. Yeah, I was impressed by how tight they were on it, especially Cameron. I thought really stood out on this one.
All right, off mic after the song, you can faintly hear Ed say, "Are you watching these guys right here?" And he's checking on the crowd. Says one side is doing well, and he kind of then checks the outskirts. Says that was a song we've never played here. We only played it like 3 times. It's incorrect, but it doesn't have the stats, especially in 2009. There's no stat sheets. There's a crowd of guys right here who are losing their shit a little bit. And he's starting to get a little testy. He's like not happy with what's going on here. He wants this show to keep the momentum because they have something. They have something working on stage. Says this big guy has got his eye out on you, and I'm sure he's talking to security, and he'll start pulling people out one at a time. The key word here, one word, 2 syllables.
Maintain, brother. Maintain.
And he says it like, maintain, don't fuck around, let's not do this again. We got precious people here. Take it easy. If anybody falls, pick them the fuck up. And if they don't, make sure you start waving your arms wildly so we can see it. And then everybody takes another 3 steps back. Next section, even flow. Johnny guitar, small town. Sound explosion for the even flow solo here. Everything is coming right at you directly. The big wall of sound, so to speak. And Mike has just a loaded arsenal to go off on. Once again, Matt is absolutely crushing this show. This is a clinic version of the solo here. Not much more to say. The crowd's invested to get to sing along a little bit and take the big hit and go.
This one is just straight fire right out of the gate. Like, he does not waste any time melting faces on this thing. It was very impressive.
Unfortunately, we're back at this position again where Ed has to stop the show. And again, he's getting a bit testy here. He's like, I know you play rough sports here, but you're going to have to chill a bit. We'll have to play the seats next time. Like, he's laying down. He says, I'm done with this shit. And he says, we're trying not to be conservative here. And he mixes in American politics within that a little bit, like a conservative versus liberal and things like that. But that's beside the point. And then I guess things settle a little bit and says, all right, let's get into Johnny Guitar. Johnny Guitar sounds decent. This is, I think, one that I've kind of softened on a little bit. I don't know why, but I guess I just have. But the reason why it isn't just a flyover song is because I think the overall fire that came out of the first 8 and the energy that's going to maintain for this section of the main set, I think the momentum is just pushing each song, like weaving perfectly. And I don't think it's like a letdown for the set at all that maybe it could have been and maybe it had been in other situations. I don't see that at all from this version.
If you're talking about 2014 or 2024, if they pull out Johnny Guitar at a time like this, you might like cock your head a little bit and be like, okay, interesting. But, I mean, yeah, you're getting 6 Backspacer songs at the show. This is the time to get it if you're going to get it. So, yeah, it was fun.
Before Small Town, Ed dedicates it to the town Te Awamuta. And, again, I think you're redispersing energy a little bit, breaking up so that you can build it back. And the crowd is still very, very invested, singing along. It's very obvious what they can do with Small Town. So we're just moving across the set. The momentum is really pushing throughout all of these here. Before Unemployable, Ed would say this one is for the Americans in the audience or anybody that's affected by American economy. Unemployable into Unthought Known and then Black.
Got a big gold ring that says Jesus says Santa's dancing from the punch. Don't it work like this? When he smashed the metal like a where we kept this since after the big boss said you missed me. Oh no way. So this life is sacrificed. Oh.
Ed's singing Unemployable with some oomph to it. I thought that was a lot of fun. Maybe he's going a little too overboard. We kind of mentioned sometimes that this really does feel like a Bruce Springsteen song, and he might have just went a little too Bruce in this, but I think it just goes to them being in a good mood and good spirits, and you're hitting a deep cut song that has some power to it. Really a pretty good version. Again, another song that I don't go back to a whole lot, but this is, again, momentum feeding in and out of every single song. And Unthought sounds terrific here too. The opening riff feels almost hypnotic in a way, and Cameron again is featured very, very heavily in this mix. Like, every hit is thunderous. You don't think of Unthought Known being like a power song at all, but that's what it's displaying here. So very interesting. And then the end of that almost turns into like this bongo pattern a little bit, which is kind of neat.
Unthought Known, yeah, I thought was the highlight. After Unemployable and Johnny Guitar, in that little set. You were ready for something to soar and something to punch your fist to, and I thought that's well done right there.
After Unthought Known, Ed mentions here when they were there like 7 or 8 years ago, they saw the Southern Lights, which is, I guess, called Australis. I did not know there was such a thing called the Southern Lights. Did you know? I had no clue that there was a Southern Lights as opposed to a Northern Lights, but that's pretty
I think
fun.
I had heard it at one point, but it's not something I've thought about in many, many years.
And then Black to follow that up. It's pretty early in the set to get Black. You still have kind of a lot to go. And even when you're thinking about how this is constructed, nowadays, you're looking at this and the penultimate song, I'm not counting Wasted Reprise here, but the penultimate song of this main set's going to be Amongst the Waves. And usually you would think like Amongst the Waves would work really well to follow a song like Unthought Known. You're packaging the Backspacer songs together, so they love to put the new songs back to back like that. And then Black, it's a song that you kind of want to save for a big moment, but I don't know. It was strange. It was a good version. It is interesting that it's not utilized as like a big time show stopping moment because the way that it's constructed, you still got more to go. Black usually is the signal of time's coming.
They know they've got something special for Encore 2. Encore 1, 2 is going to have a special guest. So I think they like, we can afford to put in something like Black a little bit early on to kind of give a little jolt to the crowd. I thought Ed was in great form on this one. Sounded awesome. It felt like the whole build of the song is just building it up. You get to that release of the solo, like you mentioned, and Mike just tears it all down and just leaves you in ruins. I thought it was just a roller coaster.
Solid momentum going into Given to Fly here. Again, we got Amongst the Waves to kind of finish this off, Given to Fly, Grievance, Amongst the Waves. And the songs just have such good impact at this point. And there's a little part where Jeff does something at the end of Given to Fly. You hear it and it just reverberates and it feels really heavy. Something that you just don't hear on Given to Fly. And like, we hear Jeff a lot from this show, more often than maybe you would hear on recent bootlegs. It's just very prominent in the mix, but just doing stuff. And I think when they're doing stuff, when they're feeling good about it, you know that they're in a good position, that they can mess around a little bit. Good version of Given a Fly. Grievance felt really snappy. The Cameron once again just popped. Everything in the main set just has enormous impact.
Yeah, Given to Fly is a sneaky good Jeff song. You know, we forget sometimes that that's a Jack era song, and Jeff and Jack had a really good lock-in groove going on that record, and Given to Fly included. That's a sneaky good one from him. But Grievance is one, again, where It's always interesting when they play it outside the US to see like what the reaction is going to be, especially now we're in the Obama years in 2009. We didn't mention this at the beginning about what to expect from these shows, but these shows could turn if the election, which now has happened, and whether we know the outcome or not is another thing, but these shows could take on a different tone if that election goes a certain way, depending on how things go on Tuesday. And, Grievance hasn't been played since 2016. It might be due for a return, depending on how things go.
All I'll say is I hope not. I hope they don't
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
And if they play it, then it's out of we just really want to play it. So
Yeah.
I would hope that there would be a lot of hopeful looking towards the future songs there. But again, we'll know on Friday. You're listening to this right now and you're going, oh God, or oh, okay, yeah, we know. I have no idea. All we know right now is that everybody's talking about Iowa polls. So, it doesn't matter till the day comes. But anyway, Ed intros Amongst the Waves by saying it's their version of surf music. And again, it's an interesting spot. You're coming off of this is not something I think you can really get away with nowadays, doing Amongst the Waves as the penultimate in the main set, because you're not going to get the same reaction. But when it's new and when it's fresh, I think people are going to react to it better. And I think that the band is going to feel a different way about it too. So while it can't happen nowadays, I think it's interesting that they decided, and again, you just mess with stuff sometimes and see if it works, but definitely more of a middle part of the set song than a late set, let's get ready for Better Man type.
With the album being so recent, I think they're just trying things and they've used this spot for new songs. Whether it works or not, I don't think it probably ever got played in this spot again. But the thing that stuck out to me was Stone at the beginning is doing these little upstrokes on the guitar, no pun intended. It kind of sounded like the Strokes a little bit, you think of those rhythms from Last Night and Hard to Explain and some of those songs from their first record. It gave me that kind of vibe to it. And I've never heard him do that before on this.
Interesting. Didn't catch that. No. Okay. One part that you can say where it doesn't matter about the song placement is that, again, momentum and impact is carrying over so well from every song in this main set that it just doesn't even matter after a while. It says it's much better tonight than the 42 degrees that we were dealing with in Sydney. It feels good to us. It's remarkable to think that we've been playing with this guy for 10 or 9 years in this group and he's never made it down here yet. That would be Boom Gaspar. It says he always has a lot of friends from New Zealand and a lot of memories down here. And he doesn't mention it, but it includes him almost drowning. So I don't know if that is a memory he'd like to go back to, but it is something that happened before the 1995 shows down there. So if you want to look into that story, I believe Five Horizons is a big thing about it on their website, so you can check that out. Wasted Reprise Bed into Better Man, another massive sing-along. You can hear the crowd just crystal clear on this. Individual voices when okay, we got something good going on, especially when you're hearing individual voices within 30,000. That's pretty solid right there. This is a big showstopper feel for it. The tag smokes, the band, crowd, perfect connection, and they build it up to be a massive moment and a good way to kind of leave you hanging there of okay, we just had a killer 18 songs. Now what's next? Fired up for whatever's going to come. This Better Man was tremendous.
Better Man is interesting, especially this year, because if you go back and look, and I'm looking at Live Footsteps here, over the last 10, 15 years, it's been consistently played 70, 75, 80% of shows, like going back a long way. Like this has been a consistent presence in the set. And then you look at 2024, 38%. Like it's really fallen off this year, and I don't know why. I guess the sets are shorter, that's going to happen. But I really love Better Man in that ending main set spot that like Porch seems to have taken residency in. I would really like to see Better Man come back there and be part of that rotation. I don't know why it would go down that drastically even after 1 or 2 years. They'd go back to even 2022. It was getting played a lot. But I agree, this version definitely just energetic all the way through. They don't let up on it, and when you get it as a main set closer, you're adding a little bit of juice to it. We've seen that with Go and Porch and Rearview Mirror, of course, do the evolution. But yeah, I think this version was definitely a standout. I would really like to see it come back in this spot.
While I don't have an answer specifically for why the percentage has gone down, because yeah, that does feel a little bit weird. It should be more upwards of 60 and 70, but you have to think that there have been a lot of two-show stints in places this year where it's not going to get played both nights, so that kind of cuts it to almost 50%. And then if you don't play it at either of those nights, then that percentage goes way down. And I can't remember specifically if like a Los Angeles or a Vegas or anything. I actually don't think they played it at either of the Seattle shows, if I'm mistaken.
They didn't.
Okay.
They did it only in Sacramento, Vegas, and Vancouver on that West Coast leg.
Okay. So that tells you a lot right there, that when there were two shows where they usually would play this one of those times, it's not being done. Out of the 6 shows that I went to, I only saw it twice, which does feel a little low. But I think that sometimes if you look at the list of the heavy rotation stuff, you're like, well, we can miss a night of Better Man, and nobody's going to be disappointed by that, and we can just get to it at the next show. When they get out of like the specific dark matter era and into a buffer year, so to speak, I think you'll see it every other night. So, all right, guys, we're at the encore. Let's pause for station identification, talk a little bit about things. So, as Chris mentioned so eloquently earlier, we are going to be doing reaction episodes yet again. And the way that we're going to do it is that we are going to we're going to talk a little bit, and then we're going to send it over and play clips of the guys out on site talking about it. And they'll give their thoughts and feelings, and we'll hear some true interviews. I'm really excited for that. And again, if you're going to any shows down in either country, you can go after the show. I think Chris said somewhere around where the Golden Circle is going to get out. You can go and find the Live on Four Legs flag, and be patient, guys. Be patient. Wait around a little bit, because you just never know when people are going to get out. And I think that was something that kind of hamstrung us this year, is that we weren't necessarily at the spot right after the show ended, because we might have been on a different side of the arena or something like that. So people could have been looking for us, and then after a couple of minutes just walked away. So make sure you find them. We want to hear from you guys. We want to get your takes, especially right now. A lot of you guys are getting Pearl Jam for the first time. You're definitely, if you have not been to the States yet, you're getting Dark Matter for the first time too. So it'll be kind of refreshing to hear all the new takes from the new album. So I'm excited to get that from you guys. So if that is something that you're interested in, it's coming up very soon. One thing I will point out there, the time difference does make it a little bit of a struggle to put these episodes out right away, because I believe it'll be happening like 4 a.m, 6 a.m, around those times on the East Coast. We're going to probably have to wait the whole entire day and then record it at night, which means not the morning after the show, but the morning after the show is probably when people in Australia and New Zealand are going to be able to hear it. So it's not going to be as instant for you guys as we would like it to be, but it will be available as soon as possible. Once we get something recorded, slapped together, and edited, it will be out to you guys. So you don't have to worry about that, but I just want to let you guys know so nobody's waiting for it and being like, where is it? Where is it? So it's coming, don't worry. And the way that you get that is through our Patreon. Yes, we are still taking donations because we're always taking donations for helping out the show and helping out our cause and doing all the things that we need to do to still continue to be a podcast for 6+ years here. So with a sign up for $1 a month at the very, very, very least, you will get all of the instant reaction episodes coming out from the land down under. And you will also get all of the episodes that are continuing to be published to go to Patreon, the stuff that's in the vault and archived down there, evolution episodes, episodes of shows from like 1992 and 1993 and 1991, shorter shows that we've done, bridge school shows, you name it. We've done a whole lot. There's a ton of content down there. We have created playlists that you can find on the main page of Patreon that you can search through and you can listen to all the episodes there. There's a lot of stuff to get to. It's not just the instant reaction stuff. So definitely check out the instant reaction episodes, but hey, remember that there's more. I just want to put that out there because I don't know if people understand that there's more, because after the tour, it's like, okay, well, I joined up for the instant reaction episodes. That's all I needed. But I think you can get something out of the rest of the stuff. So if you want more content, it's always there, you guys. If you want even more than what you get for the $1 a month, which is all of the content over on Patreon, then join up on the Giggle Egg or Horizon Leg tier for $5 and $10 a month, respectively. And just like Chris today, you will get an episode request of your choice. And this is a good one because who knows if we would have decided if 2009 was going to be the one. It could have been 1998. It could have been 2014. But Chris's donation gave us the opportunity to do this one, and knowing that there was a tour upcoming, saved it for a perfect time, and here we are. So glad that we got this one so far. It's been a really good discussion, and we'll continue getting into it more. Let's get into the details for Patreon real quick. If you want to join up, patreon.com/live on 4 legs, or you can download the app, search for Live on 4 Legs when you download the Patreon app, or you can go to liveon4legs.com, go to the top, click the orange Become a Patron button, and that's how you get in. That's how you get involved. We're a good community. There are 300 plus people that engage, so it's a very positive thing, and we just want to keep it going. And we really thank all the people that make this extremely possible. We don't know where we would be without all of that support. So again, instant reaction episodes, they're upcoming, you guys. And look, not just for the people that are going to be intaking the shows down there, but for anybody up here in the States and Europe, wherever else that aren't going to the shows, you might want to be clued in on what's going on, because we're going to get reports from down there. But again, we're not going to be following it live. So it might be difficult to really get a gauge of what happens afterwards, because if you're waking up in the morning, you're going to work, you're not necessarily focused on what's happening at the show. So you're listening to the day after. We're going to get something out for you guys, and we're going to explain and have fun with that. So, yep, I think everybody should be invested and interested in that. So, again, join up if that is the case. Okay, back to The Rock. Ed saying, we just talked about it in the back here. It won't be 11 years, I promise. Or we'll come and stay for 11 years if that'll be all right. This one is about relationships, breathing, and being. Just Breathe is to open Encore 1. Still very early in the Backspacer era, so we're not going to be denied of that bass line. Sounds very, very good. I have no complaints. We can talk about it a little bit because that's just what happens with that. But also to tie into that, I think that this specific version didn't necessarily evoke a deeper emotion. And not that it has to, and I think maybe as the song develops and evolves a little bit, it naturally does that. But this just kind of felt like a feel good moment instead of like, oh, tug at your heartstrings. This is dedicated to a couple that lost a child or something like that. So it doesn't have that exact power just yet because it's still early on the story.
Yeah, only the 17th version. And when that bass line comes in, it just gives you the warm, fuzzy feeling. I love it so much. But it's not weighed down by the expectations that people have on it now and all the things that we've seen happen with it over the years. And it's become theatrical, like he'll do the breath during that little section. But I like these versions early on where he just kind of plays it straight through and it just kind of is a little more simple and just is what it is. I like that.
Ed's saying we're nearing the end of the tour. It's certainly a tour we don't want to end. But one of the great things outside of playing for you people every night is also the people that we've been playing with: Liam Finn, EJ Barnes, and Ben Harper and the Relentless Seven. Mr. Ben Harper and his friend Mr. Satan, please take the stage. Do you know who Mr. Satan is? Ooh. Well, if you were following Pearl Jam in 2009 and what Ben Harper was doing with them, I think you might know who Mr. Satan is. There's a little friend called the lap guitar, the steel guitar, the slide guitar, whatever you want to call it. This is one of the more unique versions of Red Mosquito that they're doing here. It feels like they kind of changed the song up a little bit. Like it doesn't have its usual swing. They kind of almost like a bridge the intro chords a little bit where they kind of hold on to that one last chord and kind of let some of what Ben is doing on his steel guitar just kind of soar out a little bit. It was interesting. I think this is one of those songs that sneakily can change like that. There's just little intricacies that make this different. But I think for this, they're finding a way to make Ben the highlight.
Adds a lot to versions of Red Mosquito, and we saw this with his versions of Indifference too when we did that Evolution episode, and we talked about it a lot, where he's able to kind of put his stamp on it, and he has a style and a way of playing that's undeniably him that he can bring to Pearl Jam and kind of influence them and kind of mold the song around what he's doing, and I think that this version is a good example of that.
The one thing I will say is that I think it was really light in the mix. I don't think that you got the full extent of the power that he could have, but you feel it. So, yeah, I've heard versions of this where it could be absolutely explosive, where it jumps, but it felt like maybe in this one just mixed a little bit more in the background than I would have liked. There is a dueling guitar moment with this too, with him and Mike at the end. That sounds just fantastic. Did you catch that? Like, that was, I think, maybe the big takeaway.
Reminiscent a little bit of the Crazy Mary duel.
A little bit. Yeah. Just tremendous stuff. I Love Rain Over Me is going to follow that, and then we're going to end Encore 1 with some real just let's get these songs over with. Really fast stuff. But Love Rain has a very epic performance It is a big Cameron performance, I thought. Just the force coming out of him has been outstanding all night. And I think just the thunder that he brought into this, and it just felt like the song kind of shook a little bit. It's one of those, like, if you do it, you have to make it anthemic, you have to make it epic, and all of the little pieces have to be working with it. And I thought that Cameron was the one that drove the whole thing.
You're talking about a Keith Moon song. The drums are going to have to be on point there. And it felt really loose to me too. Like the Ben Harper thing loosened him up a little bit. And like, okay, maybe we can play around with this a little bit and have some fun with it.
Okay, the final 3 songs to finish off Encore 1 are going to be Do the Evolution, Why Go, and then Porch. And they're going to be fairly fast versions of all 3 of these songs. So you're creating some big moments like you had in the main set. You're creating that impact again to finish off here. But are we getting a little bit of the Rush treatment? Do we know that we have, because the show finishes off, I believe, at like 2 hours and 5 minutes. Are we looking at a clock? Because there's going to be something that kind of happens or doesn't happen in Encore 2 that usually happens at Pearl Jam shows that isn't featured there. What is going on? Do you think they got a plane to catch kind of deal, or what's happening?
Yeah, it could be. But I think, again, these songs in this era just kind of lend themselves to being played at that tempo. It might just been a function of 3 songs together made it feel like that, because Evolution and Why Go especially just blaze through. And I think maybe a little bit too is they knew what was coming at the beginning of Encore 2, and they wanted to make sure that that had enough time to get the treatment it deserved.
Why Go was the one that I kind of zero in on here. Boy, was that fast. And not rush and not slide. I don't want to use the rush term. I think to say that means that they wanted to get through it, but they pushed it harder. Let's just say that they pushed it harder than they usually do, which is saying a lot, because those are 3 songs that they push pretty hard. But for Why Go to just zip through, be 3 minutes flat, and then go right into Porch, which is under 6 minutes long, that is unheard of. It's a very shortened up version of the jam, incredibly electric still, and I'm sure that crowd is once again feeding off of all that, but just something that you don't see. Why Go is just so interesting when it comes to that. So, yeah. Don't want to use the term rush, but it flew.
You mentioned Porch, especially, like that bridge will sometimes meander a little bit and kind of like find their way on it and like wait for someone to take the lead. But on this one, it just drives right away. Jeff and Matt are just like, we're going, we're not wasting any time on this.
All right, we're at Encore 2. I think this is the moment that we've been alluding to here. We kind of mentioned it before. So it says, I'll toast you guys. I wish we could stay for longer. Thank you for the reception and your support over the years. When I was a kid, I used to listen to a band from New Zealand. All these years later, back in 1993, after we sold a bunch of records, I went into my basement and I wrote a letter to this guy who was one of my favorite musicians and songwriters of all time. I wanted him to know how much he meant to me, but I never sent the letter. However, I've been lucky enough to call him a friend for the past 15 years. We have 2 Uncle Neils in this group, Uncle Neil Young, and along with his son Liam, Uncle Neil Finn. Big reaction because, of course, hometown guys are going to get the big reaction. It's a big deal. And then Neil mentions in the mic, he says, it's a song for Chris Knox, who is still here. As kind of alluded to before, I did not know who Chris Knox was before digging into the show. Looking into it a little bit, you kind of get the sense of who he is. And it's an interesting way that Chris described it, because he kind of said the way that his music is kind of lo-fi, it reminded him of Daniel Johnston a little bit. I went back, I listened to the original version of this. It's so hard to make a Daniel Johnston comparison because you really don't hear anything that sounds like that, but I get it from a musical standpoint. From a vocal standpoint, not as much, because again, Daniel Johnston's so out there, but it's one of those songs I didn't even know existed before digging into the show. I never heard of them doing this cover before, and that's maybe because it's not going to be the first bootleg that I pick up, even when it comes to Australia, New Zealand wise. It's probably not. So it was a complete surprise to me. I was getting something new. That this is so rare that this happens. I'm going to assume this probably wasn't new to you. Am I right? Am I wrong?
I had heard the name, like I knew who Chris Knox was. I remember he opened up for Neutral Milk Hotel when they played down there, and I was kind of following that tour and the bootlegs and stuff in 2013. And I remember that being a big deal that he was going to open up those shows. And like he was like an old punk rock guy back in the late 70s, early 80s. All that classic Australian, New Zealand, a lot of the great bands from back then. That's a genre that I need to go back and dive into that I've always been meaning to but never have. Like all that Flying Nun stuff is just a lot of people that you like, a lot of bands like consider that some of the greatest stuff ever. A lot of like unheralded bands that put out a lot of great stuff down there at that time. But I was not familiar with this song. Evidently, it was voted New Zealand's 13th best song of all time in 2001. It's more of kind of a ballad. Reminded me a lot of the Last Kiss kind of a thing. But the crowd, they jump on this right away. They know this song. This is a huge moment, like something that you would never get anywhere else. But Chris Knox is an Auckland guy too, lived there for a long time. And yeah, it gets a huge reaction.
The song is called Not Given Lightly. It is an OTOTO.
Hello, my friend. It's morning, time to wake up. Your body and mind entwined, time to break now. I need your flesh, your warmth to stay beside me. Oh, how I wish you could be deep inside me. Oh, show me your eyes, your most tender feeling, and I'll give you mine. Oh, be truthful and revealing. It's you that I love, and it's true that I love, and it's love not given lightly. And it's you that I must love, and it's you that I love, and it's more than what it might be.
So Chris kind of mentioned it earlier that it did feel like the guys were just having fun, just kind of doing a sing-along at a bar kind of deal. And it did feel like that. But also, like, my familiarity with the song is, like, next to none. So, you know what happens with songs sometimes where, like, if you hear a version outside of the version that you know, you're like, okay, something's up with this. Something can feel a little different. But I was just taking it in and listening to it as it was. It's a really nice song. And you're right, the crowd was really into it. And I think the fact that he was coming off of a stroke, I think probably meant something to them even more, just knowing that they were paying tribute to him. You kind of mentioned the punk stuff. It kind of feels like one of those like folk punk kind of guys. Like it reminds me, it doesn't necessarily remind me of Billy Bragg, but it has the same general feel to it. It reminds me a little of Frank Turner as well, like his like
Yeah,
folk,
I can see that.
folk punk, yeah. And overall, like I think he's got a fan. I am really into this. I would love to dig into a little bit more. It seems like he's more of like a folk hero instead of like a big megastar. So that's kind of cool too, that they don't give it to like New Zealand's biggest star, but I don't even know who that would be. But I was reading some of the comments on, I guess, the music video for the song, and one of them, it was a woman who, I guess her story was that like she got into a fight with an ex, and somebody brought her outside of a bar and said, hey, you need to come listen to this. and they went outside, and it was just Chris Knox like busking with nobody paying attention to him, and at a time where people knew who he was just out there playing, and that's pretty incredible. Like, I don't know to the extent of what his popularity is, but like, think about Bruce Springsteen being outside of a bar in Asbury Park, just playing my hometown. Like, it feels like it would be the same kind of mystique to it.
Yeah, he's one of those cult artists. If you're in the know, then it's really special, but it kind of feels like your thing. And then the song, it sounded to me like Liam sang the first verse, and then, yeah, when Ed comes in, you get that moment of realization, like, oh, like he knows our song. Like, it's just a really special moment.
We'll see if this is something that comes back into fruition in the next couple days. I would love to be talking about it again. I like that we're bringing it up here and putting it to your guys' attention, because, if it's something that maybe that we weren't really privy to, then maybe you guys weren't privy to it either. And let's put it on your radar. Let's have this be a song that we can talk about a little bit more, because, again, I got to milk it for what it is. If they don't play it this weekend, then we might never get it at another Pearl Jam show. So that's
OTOTO. We got to play that Ed thing from Ohana every time.
Yeah. I'm still thinking of Chapel Rowan when I think of that. OTOTO. And I kind of like that song, guys. Don't judge me. I like that song. I don't like her, but I like that song. Anyway, don't judge me, but moving on. So as I kind of teed up before, they don't seem like they have a whole lot of time left, which means something has got to get cut. And you have maybe 4 songs, and maybe it wasn't cut. Maybe it just wasn't on the set list at all, but you have to think in this part of the show that it has to be. So instead of playing a live, they go from The Fixer into Rockin' in the Free World into Yellow Ledbetter. That's interesting, because this is a song that's brand new, essentially, and it's popular. As Chris kind of mentioned, like, the crowd was really into it. I felt like the band was really on top of it, and the band got a good reaction from it for sure. It's probably one of the better versions of The Fixer that I've heard in a very long time. But if you have to make that decision, it's such a ballsy decision to make, to go with the new hit. And maybe in their minds, it's like, we can play it live anytime, but they want to hear the new stuff too. And we have been playing this every night and feel good about it. But also, you can cut Rockin' in the Free World and go live in a Ledbetter, and that would work too, or even just cut Ledbetter. But it's a really ballsy decision not to play it live at a show like this, especially 11 years since playing this venue.
Yeah, and you're getting near the end of the tour, too. I think they only had one more show a couple of days later. And,
Church.
Yeah. I think the time constraint had to be part of it. And, like, The Fixer got cut a couple of times this year, and, like, I was all ready for you to come on here and trash this thing. I know that Fixer in the encore, especially this late, is not your favorite. But,
well, it's
again,
got some that's really not the favorite.
Got
but
some, too, yeah.
I give it a break when it's the #1 single from the album in the album year.
Sure. It's a weird choice. I mean, I think Alive, after the big moment with Neil and Liam and doing the OTOTO, like, Alive would have been a big moment there. It would have been really nice to go right into that. There had to be some kind of time thing going on, because they ripped through Rockin' in the Free World too.
Yeah, that's a super fast version. Yeah, just one of those things. And maybe people think you can listen to the show, go to the show, and afterwards be like, whoa, we got all that and we didn't get Alive? And maybe that's more impressive. That maybe you just don't think about it. You know what I mean?
And looking at it, like, Love Rain Over Me is such a weird choice for that too, because that's like a 6-7 minute song like that. Just weird.
They saved the time for the big moment. I think that's what it comes down to. So
Yeah.
it's a good version of Rockin' in the Free World. I thought the solos were really juiced. I thought that mic sounded amazing. And we have kind of a blink and you miss it moment. I don't know if you heard what I heard, but tail end of Rockin' in the Free World, did you hear something like as the song was ending, like the last chord, there was like a little trail of Mike playing a little something for maybe a split second. I'm gonna guess you didn't
No,
catch
no,
that.
no. I'll have to go back and listen.
Oh, sounds like I want to be your dog.
Thank you so much.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, it just had that little dun 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 and cut off immediately. But it had the same
Yeah.
tone, the same inflection as that. We'll leave it up to you guys to be the judge. If you think so, then yeah. Well, this show closes out with Ledbetter. What a great show this was. I know we're almost at the point of rating and doing the list, but I just got to say that it really reinvigorates you when you get to listen to a show, and we do a show a week, and sometimes not due to the shows themselves, but sometimes just getting into the routine a little bit, you can kind of be like, all right, one show, edit, on to the next research, discuss it, edit, research, and you just keep going. There's a pattern to it, and it's easy to just kind of set it and forget it. But this show kind of perked me up a little bit. I think maybe, I don't know. I was talking to friends about it earlier today. I might have had a little post tour depression, to be honest with you, because I tried to stay away from stuff recently. I don't know why, but I have not been on social media very much. I've had stuff that has been going on. I was really focused on baseball for the month of October, but I was trying to like push myself, like, hey, maybe you should engage more and talk about Pearl Jam more. And I just didn't find things that I wanted to really talk about outside of like, here's what we talked about this week. So I don't know. Like, I hope that this is pushing in the right direction of being like, all right, let's get out of this funk, especially with the tour coming up and new things to look forward to. I'm hoping that the funk ends. So yeah, it's just a little look into my personal bit that I'm sure none of you give a shit about, except for like the 5 of you that talk to me on a regular basis. So anyway, all right. I think that's our show, unless you have something else to say about Ledbetter.
It just felt like the party atmosphere, like felt earned. Like this is a long show, not like an epic 38th show, whatever, like we did with Denver, but it's got a journey to it. It's a lot of things, and it felt like Ledbetter was earned. It felt like the crowd really was reciprocating the energy on it.
And there we have it. So let's pick some moments here. I think there are a lot of good ones to look at and talk about here. So, what are going to be the 3 that you want to choose?
Yeah, my number 3 is Black. My number 2 is Hail Hail, and my number 1 is Not Given Lightly.
There are a lot of really good moments here that I think leaving off will be, especially with what you picked, it'll be a shame if I left this stuff off, but also I think that my 3 are pretty solid. I'm going to say my number 3 is Better Man. My number 2 is Not Given Lightly. And my number 1, I was just blown away by this version of Severed Hand. I
Hmm.
have been thinking about it for days. So yeah, this is terrific. And I loved Faithful from the show too. I loved Hold On. Those are really, really tough to leave off here. So I mean, when you can create like a top 5 or top 6 of your top 3, that means you got something pretty good.
We didn't even mention Red Mosquito and all that. Yeah.
Yep, definitely deserving. Absolutely
Yep.
deserving. Daughter even deserving of a spot for sure.
Sure.
All right. What are we going to do with this one? Where does it rank in the pantheon? I don't know. We're just rating it. This is the entertainment portion of the show. Who cares?
Um,
But
Throw
I'm
it
interested.
up on the throwing darts here. This is a fun listen, and it's gonna get maybe a little bumpy because I'm like you, like you listen to shows and they can all start to kind of sound the same after a while, especially if you're in the same era. And like 2009 is not one that we've gone back to a lot. And there's good stuff here. Like you get Hold On, which has only been played 5 times. You get an OTOTO. You get some guest appearances. You get some really good versions of some classics and some good versions of some stuff that we don't talk about a lot. So Maybe this one gets a little bit of a bump than if we had done it at a different time, but I'm gonna give this one a solid 9.
Yeah, I got no complaints. I got no problems with that because that's exactly where I am too. And maybe if this is a show, and I'll just throw it out there. If this is a show that's in the States, maybe I don't see it like this. I don't know. I can't say. But I think because you get a different crowd and it's a different feel because you know that something special is happening because they haven't played there in a long time. You know the energy is good. You know the songs are impactful. It feels different than just playing like the sixth show on a West Coast or an East Coast run. You know what I mean? Like those shows can be outstanding, amazing, but the shows that are kind of like the unsung hero kind of shows, I think this is better than even some of the ones that we got, like say like this year that could be seen as unsung heroes. This is a terrific show. I wish we could have played the whole thing for you guys, but you know, we have to talk too. So I encourage everybody to go out and find a bootleg and download it, listen to it, because it's really one of a kind. I'm right in a 9. I think it should be seen very, very highly for the folks that went down there. Like, I fully understand. Sometimes I don't understand when people make their request, and sometimes it's personal, and I get that point. But I can fully understand why Chris made this request and why he wanted this show. And that's when you know you have something pretty terrific. Well, John, you kind of said that we've been doing a lot of similar eras. So next week, I think we got to go back to 2009. We're going to do it again. Javier not involved in this episode because Javier does not like 2000, even though I texted him and I'm like, this is a good boot. You're going to like this. We'll pressure him to do some more for us next week. But next week, we are doing another Patreon request from John McFarlane. And the show is going to be Melbourne because I believe that would be our next stop on the tour. So Melbourne 2009 is next week's show. Thank you all for tuning in. And if you are listening to this show for the first time from Australia, hopefully we didn't scare you away. I'm glad we didn't make a whole lot of Australian references. And if you're down there and you happen to get a Crocodile Dundee sticker and you're mad at me, I understand. But look, that Simpsons episode with Knifey Spoonie is like one of my favorite Simpsons moments of all time. I had to do it. I'm sorry. I get why people would be upset, but you know what? I did it for me. Sorry, guys. Sometimes I have to do it just for me. But the New Zealand ones are pretty cool. The stickers are kind of like the All Blacks. It's the rugby team down there, the All Blacks. So if you get one of those stickers, I think people are really going to appreciate that. But if you are not subscribed to this podcast and somehow you would like to listen to us more, then make sure you are subscribed on your favorite podcast platforms. Just to let you know, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, those can be a few. Make sure you're subscribed over to those. And if you really like us, then if you want to give us a 5-star rating, you are free to do that. That is available for you to do. It helps us out, it helps the visibility, helps the engagement, and also what else helps that? It's comments. Leave a comment, let the people know what you think about this podcast, and that's straight to the bank, guys. That's getting more people involved. Australia, I will say, is one of our top countries outside of the US that we have, maybe even a better fan base than England. I dare to say that, but England's pretty good too. Australia is one of the top international countries that listen to this podcast. So throw this out there. I know that the next two are going to be both Australia shows. I thank you guys for being interested, and a lot of the guys that I know down from Australia and New Zealand are very, very positive people and really love this band. So I'm very happy for you guys that you're getting everything that you've wanted after 10 years. You all fucking deserve it so much. With that being said, Now we say goodbye. This may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, miss you already, miss you always. Till next week, Melbourne. Let's shake off some of that post-tour depression, guys. If you're feeling it too, if you went to Ohana, if you went to Fenway in the last couple weeks, you're like, haven't wanted to dig into Pearl Jam as much because it brings back it's the sadness, because you know that you're not going to go to a tour for the next little while. There's nothing ready in the future for you guys. Then hopefully hearing some of the stuff that comes out of New Zealand and Australia will reinvigorate you guys to get involved. I'm hoping that it does for me. And yeah, it's a real thing, but we got to help each other. We got to be a community on this. So, all right, guys, thank you all for listening. Until next week, see you on the pod.
Maintain, brother.